At 6:47 a.m., my phone rang. So hard it felt like it cracked the silence in my kitchen. I was already up, coffee in my hand, watching snow drift past a window in Toronto, like the whole city was moving in slow motion. The caller ID said Brian. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Not since the last time we stood in Mom's nursing homeroom and pretended we were a normal family, while tension sat between us like a third person. I answered anyway. Michael, he said. His voice had that staged heaviness people use when they want credit for feeling something. I've got bad news. My stomach tightened before he even finished the sentence. Mom passed last night, peacefully, in her sleep. For a second, I didn't process the words. My brain grabbed at details that didn't matter, like the steam rising off my mug, like the way my thumb was pressed too hard against the phone. What? I heard myself say. When? I was going to see her today. He didn't pause, didn't soften, didn't let it land. Funeral's Friday, he said, like he was confirming a dentist appointment. I already handled it. Then his tone shifted, and I swear I could hear him straighten his back on the other end of the line. And, Michael, just so we're clear before you start getting ideas, Mom's will is airtight. Everything goes to me. The house, the cottage in Muskoka, her investments. All of it. My hand went numb around the phone. What are you talking about? I said, voice suddenly too quiet. That makes no. You get nothing, he cut in. And don't even think about contesting it. Click. He hung up like he'd just won something. I stood there staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring again, waiting for the part where he called back and said he'd misspoken, or he was in shock, or he was sorry. But it didn't ring. My mother was gone, and the first thing my brother wanted me to know was that he'd already taken everything she left behind. No, I'm sorry. No, she wasn't in pain. Just a warning. That's when the cold started spreading through my chest. Not grief yet, something sharper. A sense that I'd been standing in a room for months with a gas leak and only now noticed the smell. Something was wrong. And when Brian said, don't even think about contesting it, what I heard was, you're too late. So let me rewind, because to understand that phone call, you have to understand what Brian had been quietly doing while I was busy trying to hold my life together. My name is Michael Reynolds. I'm 64, retired civil engineer. 40 years designing infrastructure all over Ontario. The kind of work people drive on every day without thinking about it. 3 years ago, my wife, Elizabeth, died of cancer. The kind that doesn't care how good you are, how loyal you are, how hard you pray. One day you're holding her hand. The next you're staring at an empty side of the bed that never warms up again. We had one daughter, Madison. She's 28 now, a marine biologist living in Vancouver. Smart, stubborn, and allergic to anything that smells like pity. After Elizabeth died, Madison went back west because she said the ocean was the only thing that made her feel like she could breathe. I stayed here, and I clung to one person like a life raft. Mom, Margaret Reynolds, 85, retired school teacher, sharp as a tack her whole life. The woman could recite poetry from memory and destroy you in Scrabble while smiling like it was polite conversation. She lived alone in her home in Richmond Hill for years, stubborn about it too. I'm not moving until they carry me out, she used to say, and she meant it. Brian is my younger brother. He's 58, for years between us. But somehow he always felt like he was born with a different set of rules. Growing up, we were close enough. Hockey in the driveway in North York. Fights over who got the last cookie. Normal stuff. As adults, we drifted in that slow, quiet way families do when no one says out loud they're choosing distance. Brian became a real estate agent. Married Jennifer. 2 kids. On the outside, the picture looked clean. But over the years, I started noticing the cracks. Brian was always chasing something. The next big deal. The next commission. The next one move that was supposed to put him on top. He had that restless energy of a man who can't stand still because standing still feels like losing. And financially, he was always stretched thin. There were family dinners where the room went quiet for just a beat too long when money came up. Comments about deals that didn't close. Investments that temporarily went south. Jennifer picking up double shifts as a nurse because someone had to keep the lights on while Brian played the hero of his own movie. Mom saw it too. She just didn't want to believe it. Then, about 9 months ago, Brian started circling closer to her. He called more, visited more, became helpful. He told her she needed extra support, that it wasn't safe for her to be alone anymore. That paperwork needed to be streamlined. Bills, appointments, all the boring adult stuff she hated. And then he floated the idea that changed everything. Power of attorney. Just so I can help Mom, he said, smiling like a saint. Just to manage things if you ever get sick. You know, to protect you. Mom hesitated. She looked at me once when he said it, like she wanted me to weigh in, like she was asking without words. Is this smart? But Brian was persuasive. He always was. He knew exactly when to lean in, when to act wounded, when to remind her he was her baby boy. And Mom loved us both. That was the problem. She couldn't imagine one of her sons would ever use her love like a weapon. Within weeks of Brian getting POA, Mom suddenly wasn't well, not just forgetful, not just slowing down. Brian told everyone she had severe dementia. He said it like it was a medical fact carved into stone. Then he moved her into Maple Grove Care Center. He told me it was urgent, that she couldn't be left alone, that she was getting confused, wandering, forgetting the stove. When I showed up to see her, I almost didn't recognize her. My mother, the woman who used to argue about politics with strangers in line at the grocery store, sat slumped in a chair like her bones had forgotten how to hold her up. Her eyes looked through me instead of at me. Margaret, I said softly, stepping into her room like I was approaching something fragile. She blinked, slow, empty. Mom, it's me, Michael. Nothing. No spark. No smile. No little jab about how my hair was getting thin. She just stared, mouth slightly open, like the concept of me didn't exist. When she did speak, it was broken pieces. "Where am I?" she whispered once. Another time she asked if her mother was coming to pick her up. I walked out of that room and went straight to her doctor, Dr. Andrew Carlisle, because none of it made sense. She was fine. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. 2 months ago, she was living alone and beating me at Scrabble. Now she doesn't know my name. How does that happen? Dr. Carlisle didn't even blink. He gave me that calm, practiced smile doctors use when they want you to stop asking questions. Dementia can progress rapidly in some cases, he said smoothly. At her age, cognitive decline can be quite sudden. It sounded like an answer, but it didn't feel like one. Still, I kept showing up, 3 times a week. I sat beside her bed, even when she stared past me. I held her hand, even when she flinched like she didn't know who I was. I talked anyway, because the silence in that room felt like surrender. I told her about Madison, about my volunteer work, about the snowfall, the birds outside her window, anything that might hook her back to the world for even a second. Brian came too, sometimes, but not like me. He always looked rushed, always checking his watch, always stepping out to take calls. He'd pat Mom's shoulder like she was furniture and then tell me, she's declining fast, as if he was narrating it. I didn't want to believe what my gut kept whispering. I told myself grief makes people weird. Stress makes families messy. That Brian was just coping in his own way. But standing in my kitchen after that phone call, with the snow falling and my coffee going cold, my denial finally snapped. That wasn't grief in Brian's voice. That was ownership. He didn't sound like a son who lost his mother. He sounded like a man who'd been waiting for the moment she stopped breathing. And for the first time, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was scared of what I might discover if I started pulling on the thread Brian had wrapped around my mother's life. I didn't even let the shock settle. I picked up my phone again and called Maple Grove Care Center with hands that felt like they didn't belong to me. When someone finally answered, I kept my voice steady by force. "I'm calling about my mother, Margaret Reynolds. I was told she passed away last night." There was a pause that stretched too long. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reynolds," the woman said carefully, "but I'm not seeing anything like that in her chart. Let me verify with her unit." My pulse started hammering. I could hear muffled footsteps, distant voices. a cart rolling somewhere in the background. Normal sounds. The kind you hear in a place where people are alive. She came back a minute later, sounding confused now. "Sir, your mother is fine. She's in the dining room. She's having breakfast." My knees went weak. I sank into a chair like someone had cut the strings holding me up. "You're sure?" I whispered. "Yes. Is there some kind of misunderstanding?" I swallowed hard, and my mouth tasted like old coffee in panic. "Do me a favor," I said. "Please don't mention this call to anyone, especially not my brother." There was a beat. "Okay," she said, and I could hear the question she didn't ask. I hung up and stared at the screen until it blurred. Brian hadn't made a mistake. He'd rehearsed that voice. He'd dropped the funeral date like a deadline. He'd rushed to the part about the will like it was the only part that mattered. He didn't think I'd check. I called my daughter next. Madison answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "Dad? It's barely 7 there. What's going on?" I took a breath that shook. "Your uncle called me. He said Grandma died." Madison went silent. "She didn't." I added, "Maple Grove says she's eating breakfast right now." I heard Madison sit up. The rustle of sheets, the click of a lamp maybe. Her voice sharpened instantly. "That's not a prank, Dad. That's criminal." "I know. Are you safe?" That question hit me harder than it should have, like she already understood what I was only starting to admit. "I'm fine," I said, though I didn't believe it. "But Brian is doing something. He's trying to take everything before anyone realizes what's happening." Madison's exhale was shaky. "That's elder abuse. That's fraud. If he's lying about her being dead, what else is he lying about?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but he said the funeral is Friday. 3 days from now. Why would he say that if she's alive?" "Because he needed the world to think she was gone. Because a dead woman can't contradict paperwork." After I got off the phone with Madison, I didn't pace. I didn't sit and cry. I went into work mode, the same cold focus I used for 40 years when something failed on a job site and people could get hurt. First call was to Daniel Harper. I'd worked with Daniel years ago on a construction contract dispute. He was the kind of lawyer who didn't waste time pretending situations were less ugly than they were. I told him everything. The call, the threat, Maple Grove confirming Mom was alive. Daniel didn't let me finish before he cut in. "Michael, listen to me. If your brother has power of attorney and he's misrepresenting her condition or moving money, this isn't family drama. This is a crime." My throat tightened. "What do I do?" "You need proof," he said. "Not suspicion. Not vibes. Proof. Banking records, property transfers, medical documentation. Anything that shows a pattern." Then he said something that chilled me in a different way. "And whatever you do, don't tip them off. People like that get reckless when they feel cornered." People like that. My brother. After Daniel, I hired a private investigator. Her name was Lauren Hayes. She came to my house that afternoon, sharp eyes, calm posture, mid-40s. Dark hair with gray streaked through it like she'd earned everyone. She sat at my table with a notebook open, like this was just another case. "How long has Brian had the POA?" she asked. 9 months, I said, right after Mom supposedly developed dementia. Lauren's pen paused. "Before that," she was competent. "Completely," I said, volunteering at the library, playing bridge twice a week, driving herself to the grocery store. Then suddenly she can't remember my name. Lauren didn't look shocked. That was almost worse. "I've seen this before," she said. "Give me 48 hours. I'll find out what's been happening with her accounts, her properties, anything your brother touched." That evening, I drove to Maple Grove without telling anyone. The building looked the same as always. Lights warm behind windows. The kind of place that tries to feel like comfort while smelling faintly of sanitizer. When I got to Mom's room, she was in her usual chair by the window, facing the darkening sky. Her hair was thinner, her face more lined. But there was something different about her that night, something I couldn't name. Less foggy, more present. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low, like loudness might scare her away from herself. I pulled a chair close. It's me. She turned slowly. Brown eyes met mine. For a split second, something flickered. Not a smile. Not words. Just a look that felt like a hand reaching for mine from underwater. Mike, her mouth moved like the name was trapped behind a wall. My throat closed. Yes, I whispered. Michael, I'm right here. Then the door opened and a nurse stepped in to check her vitals. And whatever fragile thread had connected us snapped again. Mom's gaze drifted away, back to blank distance. I sat there after the nurse left, staring at the medication cups on her tray like they were evidence in plain sight. A fake funeral. That was what Brian had tried to sell me. If he convinced everyone Mom was dead, what could he do while people were grieving and not looking too closely? Move money, sell property, sign documents, clean out accounts, all while I was supposed to be quietly mourning and staying in my lane. It was insane. And the worst part was how clean it could be if no one questioned it. Lauren called the next morning. Her first words were, "Michael, sit down." I was already at my kitchen table, but my body still went tense like I might fall. "Your brother has been busy," she said. "In the last 8 months, he's moved about $280,000 from your mother's accounts into his." My stomach rolled. "He also sold a cottage in Muskoka," she continued. "It went to a numbered company. I'm still tracing the ownership, but I'm betting it loops back to him." My fingers curled into a fist so tight my knuckles hurt. "And he's been using her credit cards," Lauren added. "Not groceries, not medical equipment. Charges that look like someone living beyond their means." I closed my eyes, trying to breathe. Then Lauren dropped the detail that made everything click into place like a lock. "The doctor who diagnosed your mother, Dr. Andrew Carlisle," she said. "He went to university with Brian. They've been friends for 30 years. I felt sick, like the room had tilted. "So that diagnosis I started could be exaggerated," Lauren said. "Could be convenient. And if she's being over-medicated, sedatives, antipsychotics, anything like that, it could explain why she looks vacant and confused." My mouth went dry. "You're saying her dementia could be manufactured." "I'm saying it's possible," Lauren replied. "I'm trying to get copies of her medical records. But it takes time. In the meantime, you need to document everything you see. And you should record any conversations you have with Brian if you can. Ontario allows one-party consent." I stare at the phone, hearing my own heartbeat in the quiet. Record my brother. Collect evidence. Treat him like a stranger. By that afternoon, I was back at Maple Grove with my phone in my pocket, recording ready, nerves stretched tight. I walked into Mom's room and stopped cold. The bed was made. The chair was empty. The air felt wrong. A nurse I didn't recognize was changing the sheets like nothing mattered. "Where's my mother?" I asked, and my voice cracked despite my effort. She looked up, cheerful in the way people get when they don't realize they're about to ruin your day. "Oh, Mr. Reynolds. Your brother took her out. Said she needed fresh air." My blood went cold. "When?" "About an hour ago." I turned and moved so fast, I nearly clipped a cart in the hallway. I hit the parking lot and scanned for Brian's black Mercedes. Gone. I called him. No answer. I called again. Nothing. 5 times. Straight to voicemail. Every minute that passed made my thoughts darker. Not dramatic, not imaginary. Practical. What could he do with her alone? Where could he take her? What could he make her sign? What could he inject into her routine and call it an episode? 3 hours later, I saw the Mercedes roll back in. Brian got out first, calm, smooth, like he'd just come back from running errands. Then he opened the passenger door and helped Mom out. She shuffled. Her head drooped. She looked exhausted in a way that wasn't normal tired. I stepped into the hallway and waited. Brian spotted me, and his face tightened instantly. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, like I'd shown up to spy on him at work. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give him that satisfaction. "You told me Mom died yesterday." I said, "But she's alive, and she's right there." Brian stared at me for a second, then actually laughed. A short sound like this was all inconvenient comedy. "Oh, that..." he said, waving a hand like he was brushing away lint. Yeah, I thought she was going downhill. She had an episode. I panicked. An episode? I repeated, eyes locked on Mom as she swayed on her feet. Brian's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know how dementia is. Things happen. Where did you take her? I asked. Just a drive, Brian said. She likes getting out. I looked at Mom. She looked like someone had drained the life out of her. She can barely stand. I said quietly. Brian's expression hardened. He stepped closer, so only I could hear him. Back off, Michael, he said. I'm her power of attorney. I make decisions. Not you. He leaned in just a fraction more, voice low, sharp, controlled. And if you don't like it, he added, go get yourself a lawyer. Brian brushed past me like I was a nuisance in his way. He half carried Mom through the doorway, guiding her into that chair by the window. He bent close to her, mouth near her ear, speaking so low I couldn't catch a word. His hand stayed on her shoulder a second too long. Not comforting, controlling. Then he straightened up and walked out, without even looking at me, like the room belonged to him and I was just visiting. I stood there a moment, staring at the back of his jacket, trying to decide if I should follow him, grab his arm, start yelling right there in the hallway. Instead, I did what I've been doing for months. I swallowed it. I waited for the staff to stop watching. I walked out to the parking lot on legs that didn't feel steady. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. My brain was already overloaded, like it couldn't hold one more ugly surprise. But something in me, something stubborn and suspicious, made me answer. Hello. Silence. Then, so faint I thought it was whined to the speaker, a woman's voice breathed my name. Michael? My skin went cold. Yes, I said quiet. Who is this? A pause. A tiny sound like someone wetting their lips. It's me, the voice whispered. I stood perfectly still, snow landing on my coat, melting down my neck. Who? I said again, harsher. It's your mother. My mind rejected it instantly. My mother was 20 feet away, in her room, in that chair. I glanced at the screen. Blocked number. My mouth went dry. That's not possible. Listen, she whispered, and her voice was different now, tighter, urgent. I don't have time. Come to my room tonight. After 10. Make sure Brian isn't here. My heart started slamming against my ribs. And Michael, she added, voice dropping to almost nothing. Don't tell anyone about this call. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot staring at my phone, like it had turned into evidence in a murder case. That could not have been Mom. For months, she barely formed sentences. For months, she looked at me like I was a stranger. For months, her words came out broken and wrong. But that voice, even whispered, had sounded like the real Margaret Reynolds. Clear, focused, the woman who used to correct my grammar at the dinner table and laugh when I rolled my eyes. I got in my car and didn't drive away. I sat there until the sky went fully dark, watching Maple Grove like it was a house where someone had hidden a body. Brian's black Mercedes was gone within the hour. No surprise. When my dashboard clock rolled past 10, I used my key code at the side entrance and slipped inside. Night shift. Fewer footsteps. Fewer questions. Just dim hallway lights and that quiet that always felt too heavy in places like this. I made it to Mom's room and paused outside the door, my hand hovering over the handle. What if it wasn't her? What if Brian set this up to see how I'd move? What if I walked in, and the first thing I saw was my brother waiting with that cold smile? I pushed the door open anyway. Mom was sitting up in bed, not slumped, not staring at nothing. Sitting up, the lamp was low, throwing soft shadows across her face. When she turned toward me, her eyes were sharp, awake, tracking me like she actually saw me. Close the door, she said. Not the garbled mumble I'd gotten used to. A normal, steady voice. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Mom. Close it, she repeated, calm but firm. I shut the door. My hands were shaking. She patted the edge of the bed. Sit down, sweetheart. Sweetheart. She hadn't called me that since I was a kid. I sat like I might fall through the floor. Are you? I started, then my voice cracked. Are you okay? What is happening? My mother smiled. Not a confused smile. Not a blank one. The smile I remember from my childhood when she caught Brian and me trying to sneak cookies before dinner. I'm fine, Michael, she said softly. I've been fine. My brain couldn't catch up. But the dementia, you didn't know me. You couldn't. I knew you, she said. I always knew you. My eyes stung instantly. Then why did you look right through me? Her face shifted, a sadness settling in. Because I needed time, and because I needed to know something I should have known years ago. I shook my head, trying to breathe. Mom, Brian is stealing from you. He told me you were dead. He's planning a funeral. I know, she said, the way she said it, like she'd been waiting for me to arrive at the truth. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm, steady, nothing like the weak, trembling hands I'd been holding for months. I'm 85, she said quietly, and after your Elizabeth passed, I watched you come apart and put yourself back together in silence. I started thinking about what happens when I'm gone. I swallowed hard. And I realized, she continued, that Brian has been hungry for a long time. Not for love, for money, for control. My stomach turned. So you pretended to be sick. I pretended to be confused, she corrected. There's a difference. I stared at her. Why? She leaned back, eyes fixed on me. Because when Brian suggested power of attorney, I saw the trap coming. I just didn't know how far he'd go. My mouth opened. No words came. I consulted my own lawyer weeks before I signed anything, she said. Someone Brian doesn't know. I placed most of my assets into an irrevocable trust. My breath caught. You moved everything. Not everything, she said. I left accounts accessible. Not enough to ruin me, but enough to show me exactly who Brian is when he thinks no one is watching. My chest tightened with anger and relief at the same time. He moved money. $280,000. Lauren found it. Mom nodded slowly. I know. I watched him do it. I stared at her. How? Her expression went flat. Harder. He comes in here and talks to me like I'm furniture, she said. He shoves papers in front of my face. He gets angry when I don't sign. He thinks confusion means stupidity. My jaw clenched. And he's gotten sloppy, she added. He's been taking things from this room. My wallet, my mail, anything he thinks might help him. I've documented it. My throat went dry. Documented it how? Mom's mouth twitched like she almost didn't want to tell me. I have recordings, she said. Not just his words. His pressure, his temper, the way he speaks when he thinks I can't remember it later. My heart thudded. Mom, he told me you were dead. That's not just greed. That's desperation, she cut in. Because he's running out of time. I felt sick. He took you out today. Where did he take you? Mom's eyes narrowed. Nowhere special. Just drove around. Talked at me the whole time. Told me Friday was the day. My spine went cold. Friday. He said I was going to have an accident, she said, voice steady but her fingers tightened around mine. He said it like he was discussing the weather. He wants signatures. He wants everything clean. I sat there frozen, rage buzzing under my skin. We need the police, I said. Now. No, Mom said immediately. Not yet. I stared at her. Mom, he's talking about you having an accident. I know, she said. That's why this ends properly. She leaned closer. Daniel Harper is your lawyer, yes? I nodded. He's been mine too, she said, for the last month. Quietly. He knows what Brian is. He's helping me finish this. My mind raced. You've been planning. I've been surviving, she said. I squeezed her hand like it was the only real thing in the room. Tell me what you need. Mom's gaze held mine, calm as ice. I need you to trust me. I swallowed. Always. For the next 2 days, everything moved fast and silent. Daniel looped in police, But not loudly, not with sirens, not with Brian getting tipped off and doing something stupid. They agreed to let the trap close, to catch him with proof that couldn't be argued away. We installed tiny hidden cameras in Mom's room, smaller than a button, place where Brian would never think to look. We coordinated with the staff we could trust. Just enough people to keep Mom safe. Just enough to make sure nothing accidental happened on Friday. And Mom kept acting. When Brian came around, she became fog again. Slow, confused, harmless. Brian ate it up. He showed up twice more. The first time, he walked in with a folder thick with papers and a pen already uncapped, like he was done asking and ready to collect. The folder Brian carried that day wasn't subtle. Thick stack of papers, tabs, pen clipped to front like he planned to leave with a signature no matter what. He pulled a chair up to Mom's bed and laid everything out in front of her like she was a clerk at a bank. House transfer, he said, too cheerful. Just routine. Put your name here. Then here. Mom blinked slow, exactly like she always did when he was in the room. She picked up the pen with shaky fingers and made a scribble that looked like a child drawing a storm cloud. Brian's smile twitched. Sign it clearly, he said, voice tightening. You can do that. Mom stared at the paper like she was trying to remember what a pen was. He leaned in, jaw clenched. Mom, I'm trying to help you. The hidden camera caught his hand, tapping the paper harder and harder, each tap louder, impatient. He wasn't begging. He was training her. The second visit was worse. Thursday night, late. The hall lights were dim. Staff thin. Brian walked in carrying a small medical kit, like he belonged there. He shut the door behind him. On the video, Mom looked small in bed. Confused. Harmless. Exactly how he liked her. Brian held up a syringe and spoke softly, almost sweet. Just your meds. This'll calm you down. My stomach turned watching it later, because it wasn't care. It was preparation. He swabbed her arm like he'd done it before. Mom murmured something. Played foggy. Let her hand drift away like she didn't understand what was happening. He pushed the needle in. We had the substance tested afterward. It wasn't a normal dose. It was a massive hit of sedatives. Something meant to drop a person fast and keep them down. Mom's acting saved her. She let her body slacken just enough to satisfy him. She breathed slow. She let her eyes go heavy. She gave him exactly what he wanted to see. Brian smoothed her hair like he was comforting her, and the words that came out his mouth made my skin crawl. Tomorrow, he whispered. Tomorrow you finally get peace. No more struggling. He said it like he was doing her a favor. Friday morning arrived like a countdown hitting zero. Brian booked Thornhill Funeral Home. He sent notices. He made calls. My phone started lighting up with relatives I hadn't heard from in years, voices thick with sympathy. I played along. Yes, I told them. It was sudden. Each lie tasted like metal. But Daniel's plan only worked if Brian believed he was winning. By early afternoon, Thornhill Funeral Home was packed. Brian had staged the whole thing like a performance. Flowers everywhere. A large photo of Mom at the front from 20 years ago, smiling, full of life. An obituary printed with soft, flattering words about a beloved mother after a long illness. Long illness. That was his favorite kind of story. The kind that leaves no fingerprints. I sat in the front row with Madison beside me. She'd flown in that morning, eyes red from lack of sleep and fury. Her hand kept gripping mine like she was making sure I didn't explode early. Across the aisle, Brian sat with Jennifer and their kids. Jennifer kept touching his arm, rubbing his shoulder, feeding him comfort like he deserved it. Their children looked genuinely wrecked. They loved their grandmother. They didn't know they were sitting inside a lie. At exactly 2 p.m., Brian stood. He walked the podium slow, head bowed, the perfect grieving son. He adjusted the microphone, took a breath, looked out at the room like he was about to deliver something holy. We're here to honor Margaret Reynolds, he began, voice polished. Born February 14th, 1939. Passed away January 7th, 2025. Madison's fingers dug into my knuckles. Brian went on about Mom being a teacher, shaping young minds, loving her family. He talked about her strength, her grace, her quiet dignity. Then he pivoted, and I knew it before he said the words. He couldn't help himself. He needed to crown himself. In her final months, he said, letting his voice soften, she trusted me to handle everything. She knew I'd protect her, manage her affairs, keep her comfortable. He paused like he expected applause for that alone. Then he smiled just slightly. The mask slipped for a second. She always said I was the responsible one, he continued, the one who could be counted on. That's why she wanted me to have the house, the cottage, everything she worked for, so I could keep the family together. I stood up. The room shifted instantly. Chairs creaked. Heads snapped toward me. You could feel confusion ripple through the crowd like a wave. Brian froze at the podium, eyes narrowing, warning written all over his face. I kept my voice calm. That was the hardest part. Interesting story, I said. So, tell everyone something, Brian. His lips parted. Michael, don't do this. Where is her body? I asked. A sharp murmur spread through the room. Brian's face went pale. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong. She's being cremated. We agreed on that. Did we? I said, because I called the crematorium. They don't have her. Jennifer turned to him, hand sliding off his arm. Brian, what is he talking about? Brian's eyes flashed, panic surfacing. Michael, sit down. You're not thinking straight. I didn't sit. If she's dead, where is she? I said louder now, because you told me she died. You told me she was gone. Brian gripped the podium like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Then the doors at the back of the funeral home opened. Every head turned. And there she was, my mother. She walked in slowly, using a walker, but her back was straight, her chin lifted. Her eyes were sharp enough to cut glass. 2 uniformed police officers followed a few steps behind her. The room erupted. People stood up so fast chairs toppled. Someone screamed. Someone started crying. Brian's daughter burst into tears and covered her mouth with both hands like she couldn't breathe. Mom moved down the aisle, steady, patient, letting every second burn into Brian's skin. When she reached him, she stopped and looked up like a judge looking down at a defendant. Hello, son, she said clearly. Brian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Mom's voice didn't shake. I'm not dead, she said, but whatever you thought you were inheriting is. Brian's face twisted. He tried to find the old script, the one where she was helpless. Mom, he stammered, turning to the room like he could recruit them. She's confused. She's sick. This is a mistake. Mom didn't even blink. I'm not confused, she said. I've been documenting you for months. Brian swallowed hard. Mom turned slightly so the room could hear her. The threats, the theft, the pressure to sign documents, the money you moved, the times you tried to keep me compliant. You could feel the crowd shifting from shock into something uglier. Mom's gaze moved back to Brian, and her voice dropped, quiet but lethal. I needed to see what you would do when you thought I was helpless, she said. And what I saw broke my heart. One of the officers stepped forward, voice calm and loud enough for everyone to hear. Brian Reynolds, you're under arrest. Brian blinked like he didn't understand the words. For elder abuse, theft over $5,000, fraud, and attempted probate fraud. The officer continued, you have the right to remain silent. The room went dead quiet for half a second. Then Brian did the one thing I didn't expect him to do in front of all those people. He tried to run. He shoved away from the podium, knocked the microphone stand sideways, and lunged toward the nearest exit, like he could outrun what he'd done. He made it 3 steps before an officer tackled him so hard his suit jacket rode up and his face hit the carpet. Gasps exploded around the room. Someone yelled. His kid started sobbing, raw, panicked, sound that cut straight through everything. Jennifer didn't move. She stood frozen, eyes wide, like her brain had left her body and forgotten to come back. Brian fought the cuffs like a cornered animal, twisting, spitting out words that didn't even make sense. As they hauled him up, he turned his head toward Mom and shouted, voice cracked with rage and desperation. I'm your son. You can't do this. I needed that money. Mom didn't step back. She didn't flinch. Tears streamed down her face. But when she spoke, her voice stayed steady enough to make the whole room feel smaller. "You were my son," she said. "But you stopped being my child the moment you decided my life was worth less than my bank account." The officers walked him down the aisle. He kept looking back like he expected someone to rescue him, like someone would suddenly shout that it was a misunderstanding. No one did. The legal part didn't end quickly. It never does. Months dragged by. Brian tried to play the victim. He claimed Mom was incompetent, that he was only trying to help, that I'd manipulated her, that she was confused, that she didn't know what she was saying. But he couldn't argue with video. He couldn't argue with audio. He couldn't argue with bank records. The footage showed him pressing papers into her hands, jaw tight, voice cold. The recordings captured the threats he made when he thought he was alone with her. The financial trail was clean and ugly. Money moved out of her accounts into his like he was siphoning gas from a parked car. And then Dr. Andrew Carlisle broke. When the pressure got real, where his own future was on the line, he agreed to tell the truth. He admitted Brian had leaned on him, pushed him, pressured him to prescribe medications Mom didn't need. Enough to keep her sedated. Enough to make her seem confused. Enough to make Brian's story look believable. Brian took a deal because his choices ran out. He pleaded guilty. He got 5 years in prison. He was ordered to repay the $280,000 he stole and hit with another $50,000 in fines. His real estate license was gone permanently. Jennifer filed for divorce. She got full custody of the kids. I don't pretend they bounced back quickly. They didn't. They were devastated in a way that doesn't show on the outside at first. They still loved their father, even after they found out who he really was. Madison and I stayed close anyway. We showed up. We didn't disappear just because Brian didn't deserve us. And Dr. Carlisle didn't walk away clean either. He lost his medical license. The kind of professional death that follows you even when you try to hide behind excuses. Mom didn't go back to that big house in Richmond Hill. She was done with rooms that echoed, done with property that made her feel isolated, done with the idea that she needed to live far away from the people who actually cared if she ate dinner. She bought a small condo near my place in Toronto, close enough that I could check on her, without making it a whole event, close enough that she could sit in my kitchen and correct my tea, making like she used to. We had dinner together twice a week, sometimes more, and she didn't waste what happened. She started volunteering again, but not at the library this time, at an elder abuse prevention center. She talked to seniors and families and social workers. She told them what to look for. She taught them the signs, the manipulation, the isolation, the paperwork, the sudden medical decline that doesn't feel right. With part of the money Brian returned, we set up the Margaret Reynolds Elder Protection Fund. It covered legal help for seniors facing financial abuse and supported educational programs about POA responsibilities. Mom turned what could have broken her into something that protected other people. About a year after it all blew up, Mom and I sat on my back porch during another Toronto snowfall. She had a mug of tea wrapped in both hands, thick blanket over her lap, eyes following the quiet drift of snow like she was reading a story in it. I looked at her profile and felt that familiar mix of gratitude and anger. Gratitude she was still here. Anger at what it took to keep her. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "The way you tested us." She didn't answer right away. She watched the snow for a long moment, face calm, older but not weakened. "I regret that it was necessary," she said finally. "I regret that my own son could do what he did." Her voice tightened for just a second, then smoothed out again. "But no," she added, "I don't regret knowing the truth." I swallowed hard. "I would have done anything for you." "I know," she said, and she reached over and squeezed my hand. "And that's why you passed." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Not because you visited," she continued, "though that mattered. You passed because even when you believed I was gone, even when you thought you were getting nothing, you still fought. You didn't let him win. You protected me when I couldn't protect myself." We sat there in silence, snow collecting on the porch rail, on the fence, on the bare branches. Inside, my phone buzzed. Probably Madison, calling from Vancouver, our weekly check-in. Life continuing. Normal life. Built on the rubble of what could have happened. Mom took a slow sip of tea, then looked at me again, eyes still sharp. "You know the saddest part," she said. "What?" "If Brian had simply asked," she said, "if he'd been honest about his financial problems, I would have helped him. Not with everything. Not by feeding bad habits. But I would have helped him." The words hit me harder than I expected. Instead, she added, gaze steady, "He chose to steal. He chose to treat me like I was already dead." Her mouth tightened. "And that choice cost him everything." I didn't have anything smart to say. I didn't try. I just held her hand and let the silence do what words couldn't. Because in the end, Brian didn't lose money first. He lost the right to be loved by the woman who gave him life. And I didn't gain an inheritance. I gained something Brian tried to bury before it could expose him. More time with my mother. Real time. The kind you don't appreciate until someone tries to take it from you.